Hello and welcome to the RevOps show. There's a concept that we've recently discovered that was developed by strategist and U.S. Air Force Colonel John Boyd called OODA Loop. And no, it is not a type of cereal. This concept is designed to function as the foundation of rational thinking in confusing or chaotic times and is a four-step process for making effective decisions in those situations. Today's episode is all about what OODA Loop stands for, the different aspects of it, and how we can apply this framework to business and RevOps. So with that, let's get into it.
Jess.
Doug.
Well, I got 4 back.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I gave 3 and you gave me 4
count.
back. That's a good return. That's 33% return. Big week this week. Big week this week.
2 RevOps shows.
Not even about that. Like, I'm not even thinking about the RevOps show. By the way, RevOps shows back to back.
How are you not thinking about it? I know. RevOps show back to back because Jess had a week. Jess had a rough first half of the week.
So did Doug. Fairness, so did Doug.
Calendar to calendar.
But oh, is that what we want to do?
No.
I will take the challenge.
I don't want to play this game. I really don't.
I will take the challenge.
No one wins in that game.
Just the thing is, this is how big this week is. Is that
I want to rumble?
This is a big week.
I want to rumble.
I told you were going to win.
I can't believe I won. I mean, I can. I was gearing up ahead of time, and it was hilarious that we do rumbles internally. We do debates internally. We call them rumbles, and it got keyed up as like R2, like calm, cool, collected, and I was like, oh, she doesn't know what's about to happen.
I kind of understood that with relation to Sammy, but yeah, she definitely doesn't get you.
No, that's okay though.
Yeah. I mean, there might there's one person that's more competitive here than you are.
It's you?
Yeah.
I
mean I'm not going to bring up axe throwing.
We're not going to talk about axe throwing.
But just not about the Rumble, not about back-to-back RevOps. So that's how big this week is I'm not even thinking about that because it's so big.
Okay, so why is this such a big week?
Lift fantasy football.
Uh-oh.
Head-to-head matchup. It starts tonight. Tonight's Thursday Night Football.
I know.
The Street Shufflers versus the Backstreet Boys.
It's the Dak Street Boys.
Sorry, Dak Street Boys.
Dak Street Boys.
That's what I meant. That's what I was thinking.
It's a good pun, and you're messing it up.
I admit. Hey, E Street Shufflers ain't bad either.
No, it's great. It's great. I was on a high. I was celebrating a win, and now you want to try to take the wind out of my sails.
Wait, which? Oh, the Rumble win?
The Rumble win.
In fairness, Jess, we were supposed to record this on Tuesday, so I had this all queued up for Tuesday.
I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. But we're recording on Thursday.
Because it's been 2 weeks since you won in fantasy football.
It's been 1 week. I did not win last week, so it's been 1
Even though
week
you
since
didn't
I
know that.
won.
Even though you didn't know that.
I was up until the last game. Is the problem. I was winning. And I didn't check it on Monday. I made the mistake of not checking it on Monday.
Are you saying it was fixed? That you were ahead, but you ended behind, so it's
fixed? It was rigged. It was rigged.
It was rigged?
Yeah.
It was a rigged fantasy football game.
It was. I was in the 10 spot though, and I'm number 6 now. So I'm tracking upwards still.
You were in the 10 spot.
I was in the 10 seed at the beginning of it. Now I'm 6.
That's that stupid projecting the final standings, which is just.
Don't be salty because you've gone down, okay?
Here's the thing. It comes down to this. Who wins the last game?
Who wins the last? Okay. Well,
that's the only thing that matters, right? Because you know why?
Because if you're not first, you're last, Ricky Bobby.
If you're not first, you're last.
Yep.
If you're not first, you're last.
Knew it.
So I watched The Legend of Ricky Bobby on my flight back from Houston.
Of course you did. I haven't seen that movie in like 5 years.
I was so exhausted. I wasn't feeling well.
Yep.
didn't like. I had no energy to do any work, so I didn't pay for internet. I had a set of free movies to watch, and because I was tired and not feeling well, I knew I wasn't going to pay 100% attention to anything. And what's the perfect movie to take up a bunch of time on a full flight, where you're exhausted? I mean,
Clearly,
Talladega Nights fits that bill.
Yeah,
Talladega Nights fits that bill. But my one of my favorite scenes from there was that I'd forgotten was when Ricky was, when his dad came back to help him get his confidence back, et cetera. He's like, "Well, Dick, because if you're not first, you're last, and you taught me that." He's like, "What are you talking about? There's second. You could be second. You could be third. Hell, you could even be fourth or fifth." I was like, So Jess, let's move away from Talladega Nights. Let's move away from. Are we gonna have a side bet? Is there a side bet?
A side bet for our game?
Yeah.
What's the bet?
I don't know. Well, we're recording tomorrow, so we'll try to come up with a side bet.
We'll come up with a side bet for the next episode. Yeah, I'll think about it.
So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
The question is, you're a fan of The West Wing, correct?
I am a fan of The West Wing.
Right.
Bartlett is my president. Yeah.
So who is the best character on The West Wing in the entire series? Who is the best character?
I mean,
I don't even think there's a close second. By the way, I think this is so clear. There's such a clear and distinct winner.
So
there is no second.
So I love CJ Craig.
She's great, but she's nowhere near the best character. Nowhere near.
When you say best, what do you mean best? Like, what do you mean by best? Like most first. Noble first, because if you're not first, you're last.
What do you mean best? Like the best, like the best character.
The best character? Are you on Leo?
Nope. I like Leo, but nope.
I'm just going to list all the characters now. Sam?
Nope.
I don't know who.
Oliver Babish.
Oh, is Oliver... Wait, who's Oliver Babish?
He's the lawyer.
Okay,
he's the counsel for...
It is Oliver Platt. It is Oliver Platt. Yes. Okay, so I was like, that's Oliver Platt, and then I thought, I'm confusing two Olivers. So Oliver Platt, okay.
The character is Oliver Babish. The actor is Oliver Platt.
Yes.
You didn't say, well, I'm a big fan of Allison Janney. You said CJ Craig.
Accurate. Yeah,
so I
just thought I was getting confused in my head. Yes, Oliver Babish. Okay. Why is he the best?
Because he's the best character.
But why? Why do you say that?
Seriously? You don't know?
I mean, I love Oliver Babish, but why? Why are you...
Well, first off, the opening scene where he's supposed to speak at the whatever legal conference in like Bora Bora, something, which isn't where it was, but right. And then he talks about the fact that I need a new dictaphone. I need a dictaphone. I'm like, well, you have one. It's like, it's broken. It's like, what's wrong with it? It's stuck on record, which is, not a particularly good thing you want to have lying around the White House. And then Leo and they make fun of his big hammer,
right?
His gavel, and then Leo and Bartlett come in and they explain what's going on, and you see his face go blank, and he picks up the hammer and just whacks the hell out of the dictaphone.
Yeah.
And every person that comes in and is being a smartass with him, he's like, you do not entertain me. Like, there's no one that is as sardonic and straight face. I mean, I love Oliver Platt. Like, I can't think of a single thing.
Same, but yeah.
Now, you know who the other character that I really liked in it as well?
Who?
Adam Arkin.
Okay, I'm gonna have to Google this. You're picking not series regulars. He's the counselor. Yeah, okay, yeah. That was a good episode.
Oh, so good.
I've been rewatching it. I think I watched that one last week.
Right. He's Josh is. So what? You diagnosed me in 8 hours? I diagnosed you in 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yeah.
Alrighty, Jess. Enough about the West Wing.
I can't wait to hear how you're going to connect Oliver Babish to our topic today.
Oh, am I supposed to do that?
I thought that's where you were going.
No, I was just talking about the West Wing.
You just want to talk
I'm rewatching the West Wing as well. I need it.
Okay.
I need it. I needed to watch something that can give me hope and possibility.
It's a good palate cleanser.
So, enough about the West Wing, Jess. What are we talking about today?
So there's a concept that came up that we have never talked about before. I had never heard of it.
A framework, if you will.
Yeah. We were talking
flywheel.
about. Is it a flywheel?
It is a flywheel.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it is a flywheel.
It's a reinforcing the action leads to the next observation.
Fair. Literally full circle. We were having some of our team struggling with things around client delivery, and so.
Hold on a second. Our team does not struggle around anything to do with client delivery.
No one.
You must be confusing us with somebody else.
Clearly. And so you talked about this concept of OODA Loop, which I had never heard of. The OODA Loop. And I wanted to talk about that today. So
what would you like to talk about?
What is an OODA Loop, Doug?
It's a framework for dealing with uncertain situations and in creating uncertain, complex situations, creating greater stability, greater confidence, and ultimately building a learning organization. And what is a learning organization? It's an organization that leverages, it transforms individual learning into group learning, which provides a multiple, right? So rather than having, in a learning organization, as you add each additional person, you add a arithmetic progression on the learning of the organization, where far too often you have 20 people, so you don't have the multiple of learning. You have 20 individuals who are learning in parallel situations, and when you have that, and by the way, the OODA loop applies whether it's individual or group. But when you have individuals that are learning individually, you actually create greater conflict, or whatever the opposite of alignment is. You generate greater misalignment versus alignment.
And so let's take a little bit of a step back. What does OODA, OODA, stand for?
Jess, I think that's the first time.
You think that's the first time what?
I think in 50 to 70% of the episodes that we have, I say, well, let's take a step back first. And I'm pretty sure this is the first time that you got to say that to me.
Write it down, people. Write the date down. This is an exciting
day for me.
It is.
So OODA stands for, it's a 4-step framework. It's a cycle, so a flywheel. The first, so it's observe, orient, decide, act. Observe, orient, decide, act. It was, for those of you interested in trivia, it was invented by a Air Force pilot, Colonel John Boyd, and has a dramatic impact on how they train fighter pilots.
So how
I like to think of RevOps as the fighter pilots of go-to-market.
Okay. I thought we were the Harvard of go-to-market.
No, that's Lyft.
Oh, that's Lyft. I'm sorry. That's right. Lyft is the Harvard of go-to-market.
Although, aren't we better than Harvard? Isn't that what we settled?
That's where we landed. That's where we landed. Great focus, just out of the gate here. So how do you take this concept of OODA Loop and apply it to? I said client delivery earlier, but really RevOps as a whole, and how do you take that and apply it to your day to day?
So, I actually want to connect the dots to a little bit about talking about client delivery and a little bit about talking about RevOps, and then we'll get into applying it on day to day. RevOps brings software, not digital software, but software. RevOps brings an operating system to a dynamic, complex ecosystem, and so it's beyond complicated, right? And there's a constant element of managing trade-offs. I mean, look, there are times where there's a right decision and there's a wrong decision. Candidly, you don't need RevOps for that, right? The reason that RevOps is important is for when there is no right decision or wrong decision. There are just choices. And so being able to manage those choices, there's also an element of, not only are there choices of should we do this or that? If we do it this way, these are the good things, these are the bad things if we do it that way. But there's also just a general, is the juice worth the squeeze? And by the way, it's not just is the juice worth the squeeze, it's is the juice worth enough? Because I'm not just like, I mean, think about like if we were to sit down and talk about and come up with what are 20 areas that we, where we need to improve. And if we improve there, it would have a meaningful impact on revenue, cost, profitability, whatever you want to say. I don't think it would take us much time to come up with 20 opportunities, with 20 areas to focus on.
Right.
But the question is, which one do we focus on? Which one do we focus on first? Because whatever we choose to focus on first changes everything after that. So it's not even like, okay, well, here's our 20 initiatives. Let's just work through each 20 and just kind of check that off.
Right.
Right. So you're, by the way, in the middle of the initiative that you're working on, the entire environment of whatever you're working on changes. And so you've got to account for that as well. Now, add a multiple to this. So that's what RevOps is in a company. Mm-hmm. One of the challenges that we deal with is that we're delivering RevOps stuff. Like I couldn't think of something better than that, to multiple companies. Right.
Yeah.
And so, you and I were talking about this the other day. In the vast majority of situations, especially when it comes to business, I mean, let's not get all highfalutin about. I mean, we could talk about complicated and complex. Let's realize that the vast majority of businesses have a limited. Like we're not decoding the genome.
Right.
But you do come across regularly, every day. You come across unique situations, and I believe firmly that every business is unique. Right. One of the reasons I believe that is that every individual is unique, and all of businesses is a combination of unique individuals. So there's a multitude of unique. But what does unique mean? Unique means it's 80% the same, 20% different. And in the vast majority of cases, the 20% different isn't actually unique, because there's a piece of that 20% that's present in other places as well. The 20% that's different is the combination of the 20%.
Yeah.
Or the relation of the 20%, right? So you're in a situation where it is both the same and it is different, right? And if you go in and you treat it as the same, well, you commoditize, you lose traction. If you treat it as different, then you can't scale, you can't manage anything, right? So finding that balance is what's so important. What I like about the OODA Loop is it's very much of the science. I mean, it is a dynamic, off-changing, complex, uncertain situation using everyday words of business people, of people in business. But it's really just the scientific method.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Observe, hypothesize, experiment, learn, observe, right? So it what it does is it creates a framework and a mindset to be more purposeful in what you're doing. One of the things that I read on design, et cetera, on system design and things like that is about Sully Sullenberger, right? And for those of you that the name might sound familiar, or if you don't know who he is, Sullenberger was the pilot of the U.S. Air flight that shortly after takeoff, engines went out and he successfully landed on the Hudson River. The thing that was interesting about him was, first off, he was well known as a scenario planner. He had, for lack of a word, somewhat of an executive role of coming up with scenarios that would be used in training. But the thing that's interesting about flying an airplane, especially flying something like a passenger jet, is it kind of is the definition of monotonous. Yeah. And the way I heard a pilot explain it once is it's 99% abject boredom, 1% abject terror. Yeah. And so one of the really difficult things that and it's one of the major causes of pilot error, is how do you do something that is uneventful 99.98% of the time and not become passive? Right. And so one of the things that Sully did before every flight, in addition to the checklist. And by the way, that's why you do a checklist. That's why you physically go through and announce the checklist, is to not fall into that. Is he trained himself that one of his checklist items was to look for and find what was unique about this flight.
Yeah.
Right. So it kept him in a presence that when this happened, if you look at what he did, and if you listen to the cockpit recordings, you'll see that he had already mastered an OODA loop.
Yeah.
Right. And so what that OODA loop does is it enables you to go into a highly unfamiliar, high stakes situation and maintain command, maintain a balance of sanity, while also being able to adjust to a level of urgency. Because there's no question that he conducted an OODA loop, observed, oriented, decided, acted. And it's not like it took minutes or hours or days or months. It didn't lead to analysis paralysis.
Yeah.
Right. But it was a very, very scientific method to deal with a situation that had never, by the way, not only had never happened, had never been considered before.
Right.
Right. Because the thing that was unique about that flight, there were, I think in the pilot manual or whatever, there was like 12 pages on if both engines go out.
Yep.
Right. But the only scenarios of both engines going out were either at full altitude or on landing. There was no scenario for both engines going out on takeoff.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting, and I don't know how true this is, because in the movie they have several pilots go through and try to test the same situation because they're checking to see if he did the right thing, and none of them land the plane. Like none of that. Like, so like I think they were trying to see, could he get to Teterboro? Could he have turned around and gone? And there was no scenario where you land.
Oh, got you.
At an airport, because they were trying to say that he was irresponsible for landing in the Hudson, and the reality was that was the best scenario, was to land where he landed. Like, so it's fascinating that he was able to go through that process.
That's bullshit. You wanna know why? You wanna know why that's bullshit? You know
Why
what the
is that
definition of a good landing is?
Uneventful.
No. That's a great landing. That's
where you ended up on the ground.
Definition of a good landing is one you walk away from.
Yeah.
And everybody on the plane walked away from it.
Right. Correct. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, I'm curious. I've not seen the movie, but in the movie, did anyone successfully land on the Hudson?
I don't remember if they tested that landing on the Hudson, but none of them, like they were trying to say that he was liable, I guess, for damage to the aircraft or whatever, because he didn't land it. I think that's what they were saying.
I'm gonna bet there's that was part of the dramatization.
Oh, I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was. But yeah, they went through a whole scenario where they all tested and nobody's able to land it. So anyway, so you were talking about kind of applying this to RevOps. So how would this apply to client delivery?
So I think this is probably true in everybody's job, but it's certainly true in RevOps. When does a day go by where something you've not seen before happens?
Every day.
Every day. Like there's not a day goes by where there's something that something new doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Not a day goes by that something unexpected doesn't occur.
Yeah.
Right. Now here's a quiz question for you. 90% plus of the time, what should you do in those situations?
Look for the similarities.
The end point. What's the end?
Oh, what's the end? Okay. Yeah.
What should no. I'm asking you, what should you do as what's the end? Like what's the action?
Define the problem.
Nope. That's what you do before you get to the action.
Okay, so once you
nothing. The answer is nothing.
Okay.
Not at least 9 times out of 10 or more.
Oh, I got you.
When something happens unexpected, the proper response is don't do anything.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. By the way, here's a we had an integration. All of a sudden, one day, started having API errors. Things weren't happening. Everyone started freaking out. Oh my God, what's wrong with this? Wait. We did a quick observation. Nope, everything seems to be working. We're not seeing. We don't know what's happening. Okay, let's see what happens. 12 hours later, the problem stopped, and the problem hasn't come up again.
Yeah.
Right. There was a glitch in a system. There was a glitch.
Yep.
Right. when that unexpected thing happens, what's our immediate impulse?
Fix it.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, we talked about this in another conversation. I've talked about it in terms of playing poker. You're in a sales situation, and suddenly you have this really bad call, right? You have a bad conversation, and what do you? Oh my God, we got it. What do we do? 9 times out of 10, don't do anything because nothing's changed. So how do you train yourself when now remember, humans we're programmed to identify difference. That's what our reptilian brain is focused on. That's an awful weird grin.
I love when you talk about the reptilian brain.
Right?
I knew we were going to get there.
But that's what we do. Like we're because when everything's the same, that's the right. Oh, something just moved. What's going on?
Right.
Yeah. And when you see something different, what's the next thing that happens in your body? Adrenaline.
Yep.
You know what else? You know what comes right after the adrenaline? Cortisone.
Okay, cortisone. There we go. Yeah.
You know what cortisone does? Restricts your blood vessels.
Yeah.
Everything gets tight.
Yep.
Heart rate goes up.
Yep.
You know what turns off?
Your common sense.
Yeah, your ability to think.
Yeah.
Right. The frontal lobe gets like, that's not important. Right.
Yep.
Remember, all our reptilian brain knows is life or death, danger or pleasure.
Right.
I'm getting laid or I'm getting shot.
Sure.
Right? I mean,
yeah. No, you're right. I mean, you're right. Yeah.
So now, by the way, imagine you're up in the air. You're trying to shoot down a plane. It's trying to shoot down you. Right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'd be comfortable just flying the plane, let alone.
Right.
We get really stupid when we're under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We lose all context. We get myopic.
Mm-hmm. We
lose our positioning. That's why the first thing we need to do is we need to observe what's going on.
Yeah.
What's really happening here?
Yep.
What's the context? What's the broader side? And here's the thing that we have to do. We have to observe. We're not judging.
Right.
Right. We go right into so like we're feeling some pain. And what we want to do to get rid of the pain is we want to get to certainty, which means we're probably going to take we're going to take the wrong action.
Well,
more likely than not.
And what you said about we're not judging, this is why I find it's good to get an outsider's point of view to run it by somebody else or, you know, as I've moved up the ranks, more of our staff are coming to me and I am now kind of on the other side of that of, hey guys, it's just this, like, that's what it is. And that's the situation we're in. Right.
This is where the rubber duck test can come in too.
The rubber duck test.
I don't know if it's called, I forget. Where basically, like, let's say there's nobody there to get an outside view.
Mm-hmm.
Just explain it to a rubber duck. Explain the situation to a rubber duck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because realize when you're thinking about it, you got a whole bunch of half thoughts. To actually talk it, just in translate. By the way, our ability to talk comes from our neocortex, not from our reptilian brain. Right. So just translating all of that into words, opens up your point of view, develops your understanding, brings in that critical thinking.
Yep.
Right. Now here's the thing that happens. The first time you have to do this, it's hard. It takes it can take some time.
Yeah.
But when you train yourself, when you do it again and again and again, it just becomes your go-to. It's like, boom, pause, observe.
Right.
Right. Now, if you're a fighter pilot or you've got a whole bunch of geese that have just been sucked in by both engines and they're no longer functioning, time is truly of the essence.
Right.
If you just finished your call with your VP of sales who's yelling about something, is tomorrow really going to make a difference?
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Right. And by the way, remember the days when, we forget to change the subject line of an email and it would go out and be like, oh, wait, we jump in and to fix it, we made some other mistake that just made it 2 to 3 times worse.
Yep.
You know what they say? The crime is never the problem; it's the cover-up. And so that's what observe is. It's a calming element. It's what's really going on here. Do I understand? It's a seeking to understand. By the way, here's the other thing too. Have you ever been in a really difficult, stressful situation and been able to change your mindset from one of concern and must solve to one of curiosity?
I have. It's taken
And what
a
impact
lot
does
of
that have
work.
on your ability to navigate?
Oh my God. Oh, it's night and day. I mean,
right? You go from being powerless
yep.
to powerful, right? It changes the entire scope. So what a lot of observe is approach the situation from a point of curiosity.
Yep. Yep. I live this regularly because I have a daughter who has a hearing issue that's very unique, and like anytime something's wrong with her, it like we have to stop and say, okay, well, these are the questions I'm going to ask instead of jumping to worst case scenario, which is where you tend to go.
And you know what I've learned? 99.8% of the time when something happens, the reason that it happened is something you never even considered.
Yep.
No matter how clear and certain, this clearly caused that.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So let's talk about the second step, Orient, because this is one I think you shared with me that gets skipped frequently.
So Orient is the critical thinking, right? Orient is like here's one of the ways that we orient. This is a great orientation step in RevOps. What's the problem we're trying to solve here?
Yep.
What's the real problem we're trying to solve here?
Yep.
As you begin to answer those questions, is that a problem?
Yeah.
Right. Especially in a highly complex system like we're in, sometimes that orientation stage needs more time. Right. Sometimes it's like, living with the problem before you understand it. It's better to live with the problem than to just jump in and start
right
here. This is one of the things, and I know it's hot and it brings views and algorithms love it. All these, whatever the technology is, this tip comes out, that tip comes out, and it's like, hey, wow, look at that's really cool. And when you see that tip, you see it, what do you want to do? It's like, hey, we got to do that.
Right.
It's just a natural.
Yeah.
You can't help it. So it's like, okay, well, what is this really? You should always be, by the way, if you take this mindset on, you're always observing, you're always orienting. What's changed? What's different? By the way, the whole thought of, what I talked about from the sales situation, that aspect of, has something really changed?
Right.
What does this mean? What hasn't changed? What else is impacted by this? Right? Like that's what it is. So now observing, you're just trying to get as an objective a view as you possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
Orientation, now you're seeking to understand. You're trying to understand what's really happening here. What do we need to do? This is where the idea of slow is smooth, smooth is fast comes from, right? Slow doesn't mean takes a lot of time. Mm-hmm. Slow means it's purposeful. You've thought about it. Yeah. But how many times have we, something's happened, there's a mass element of confusion, concern, you jump in and you do something, and now you're then the next thing, and this is where the and you're in whack-a-mole at that
whack-a-mole point. Plug in leaks. You plug this leak, another leak comes out, plug this leak, another. Yeah.
How many times, like, if you look at the most common project mistake we make, is it starts off and we look at it and it's like, oh, that'll be quick and easy. So we skip the orient phase, and we even kind of skip the decide phase. We just act. And then before you know it, you go, well, wait a second. We've been working on this thing for 6 months now. This thing's never going to end, right? That's what happens when you skip the orientation phase. By the way, the other thing that happens when you skip orientation, especially when you're dealing with people, is you climb the ladder of inference.
Yep.
You assign a reason and intent for things that are happening that, again, far more often than not are just wrong.
Yeah.
And remember, it's not what you don't know that hurts you. It's what you think you know that ain't so.
Yeah. And I really so Boyd described the Orient kind of stage as the scheme of pulling things apart, putting them back together in new combinations to find how unrelated ideas and actions can be related to one another. So I like that idea of thinking about it as pulling it apart and putting it back together. Like that really resonated with me, because that's how I think about things when I'm trying to diagnose and really, I guess, orient myself.
Yeah. And there in some of the research we did on this, it refers to the decide phase, or Boyd referred to the decide phase as the hypothesis stage. I actually think this is where, maybe the hypothesis is determined in the decide stage, but this is the Orient is the hypothesis development stage. It is convergent thinking. It's breaking things apart. It's understanding. It's considering alternative theories.
Yep.
Right. I forget who it was. I can't remember. It was either a podcast or a book, and I think it was a president who they would come together, and there would be some issue, and the question: does anyone have a dissenting viewpoint? And no one would have a dissenting viewpoint. He said, okay, so we're going to put this conversation on pause. And when we have some dissenting viewpoints, we'll pick it back up. Where most people would go, oh my God, no one dissents, so we must be right. It's like, well, guess what? If you're dealing with something complicated, if you're dealing with something that matters, and by the way, I've never found a simple thing to be something that actually truly matters. Then, and there are no dissenting viewpoints, then you do not understand the situation well enough. Right. And so I think that's where the Orient phase comes in.
Okay. What about
We're about to get to my favorite word, my
decide.
favorite RevOps word.
Yeah, I know. I cannot look at decide the same way since I've met you.
No, actually, there's a different word that's my favorite word in talking about this stage.
Oh, okay.
Bayesian.
Bayesian. Okay.
Right.
What is Bayesian for those of us that are not up on our SAT words?
So Bayesian is it's basically a way of making predictions. It's a process of making predictions where the most important element is what's called a prior. So I think there's a 2% chance that our email is going to break.
Yep.
Our email system is going to break. And tomorrow, email doesn't go out correctly. Mm-hmm. What do most people do? Most people go, oh my God, our email broke. We've got to go in. There's something. Well, wait a second. Yesterday, you thought there was a 2% chance of that. You now have something that's very, very heavily weighted. Yep. That must be the problem. Except it's actually very unlikely it's the problem. Right. Remember, there's a million things that could have caused that, right? And so so when you go from 2% to I'm 95% certain, which is how most people act, that's a pretty good sign that you're wrong. It's like, okay, 2%, like almost like the most I can go up is like, you know what I'm going to allocate? It's a 5% chance.
Right.
Right. This, by the way, connects to Occam's razor. The most obvious answer is usually right.
Right.
Right. But obvious doesn't mean the most recent.
Yeah.
Right. So this is the story of, we had that conversation. We thought we were going to close the business. It was a horrible conversation. It was like, holy cow. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, we're never going to get this. We've got to, it's like, no, nothing changed. That was Bayesian thinking. Mm-hmm. Right. It's like, what has actually changed here? What is actually different? Is there an alternative? No, there's not. Do they need that? Yes, they did. Right. All of these things are going in, and while every impulse said change, because we observed, we oriented, it led us to decide that not only are we not going to change, we're going to double down. Mm-hmm. We're going to make the point harder or even more directly. It's something that people think I'm anti-A/B testing. I mean, just because I make fun of it multiple times per day is no reason to assume that I'm anti the idea. I'm actually very positive. We A/B test all the time.
Right.
Right. Our A/B testing is actually called Bayesian A/B testing, which is we do this in this period of time. Now we try this in the next period of time, and we compare it to the last period of time. Right. Right. That's not a technical A/B test because it's not running parallel, or at least, it is a technical A/B test. It's not the way people think of A/B testing. Mm-hmm. But again, given what we're doing and remembering also what we're looking for is a directional signal. Mm-hmm. Right. It allows us to make that decision. By the way, it also allows us to treat the decision the way the decision needs to be treated to lead to the action, which is, okay, we're going to try this. Right. Right. And you ask the question, okay, well, what if it goes wrong? Well, it depends how big we go. Okay. Well, like if we go really big and we stop doing everything else and we just do that, it could destroy the business. Yeah. Okay. Well, how could we do something without going all in?
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we won't really know if it works or not if we don't go on. Okay, well, what could we do that might give us the first signal that says, "Hey, we're on to something."
Yeah.
Right. Which then lets us feed to the action. So all of a sudden, what we're able to do is we're able to lower the stakes.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yep.
Which enables us to act, which then plugs right back into the observe. And by the way, if you increase the cycle of those, if you increase the velocity of those cycles, you build momentum.
Yeah.
You actually move faster. And so by shrinking the decision, which you're able to do with an observe, orient, decide, act approach,
Mm-hmm.
you're actually able to experiment more. So you're technically adding more change,
Mm-hmm.
but you're creating greater stability. There's less of a feeling of change.
Yeah.
Like we start doing products. We have our first product. And all of a sudden, like I've gotten 4 people that have asked me, so what's our go-to-market plan for products? Like, why are you asking that? We talked about that 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Well, now that we have this, it's like, you're right. Nothing's changed. Remember, this is part of what we were going to do.
So
It's like when someone comes to you and says, "Oh my God, you guys are great. You should do X." And you're like, "Oh yeah, that would be right." And if I had 10 cents every time someone told me you should do that, and I did it, I wouldn't ever have to think about entering the lottery.
I was going to say, I don't know that I would ever be here. I don't know if I would still be here. Not ever, but I don't know that I would still be here if you acted that way.
Well, right. But also it's like,
yeah.
You see something that's obvious. It's never as obvious as it seems.
Yep.
Right. There's no obvious answer that's the solution to your business problems. Because if there were, business would be a whole hell of a lot easier than it is.
Yep. All right. Let's talk about the last stage, act.
Now you take action.
Yeah.
But by the way, there is no decision without action.
Well, okay. So tell me that because what if you don't do anything?
Then you didn't decide.
What if you decided not to do anything?
Oh, then the action is nothing.
Okay, so that's
so
still
there's
action.
a difference between
nothing
an active
is still
nothing.
action. Okay.
Well, there's a difference between an active do nothing and a passive do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing nothing because you chose to do nothing? Right. So your hypothesis is do nothing. Our hypothesis was there's a glitch.
Yeah.
We're going to check in 12 hours. Right.
Yeah.
So what's happening in that action is we're now on to the next observe. And so again, now think about this, Bayesian. So this morning, our integration is rock solid. 1% chance of the integration being bad. Now we get a big signal. Danger, Will Robinson, danger, Will Robinson. We go up to 33%.
Yep.
Right, which was probably an overreaction. And in hindsight, it definitely was.
Yep.
But we didn't go up to 100%. Yep. So at 33%, we're like, guys, you got to look in there. Is there anything that we're seeing that's not working?
Yep.
And if you remember, I'm not seeing anything. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna dig in deeper. Right. So we were about to double down on digging in deeper. It's like, nope.
Yep.
Even with our overreaction, we're still only on 1 in 3 that the problem is the integration.
Right.
And you remember what I said too, is I'm like, okay, it could have been application A that was the problem. It could have been application B that was the problem. It could have been system C that was the problem, or it could have been the connection that we're responsible for between B and C.
Right.
Right. As obvious elements. Right.
Yep.
And so we paused. So now we're down to 20%. So we're still, we're now going through our second loop. The decide is do nothing. We do nothing and we observe. And then we're told, no, it seems to be looking, but we want to know what's going on. Like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, let's wait a day. And if we have this problem arise again, then we'll push it with our contacts to find out what's going on. And in explaining this to the client, I said, the difficulty is if we talk about this problem
mm-hmm.
and we can't replicate it, and like, we're not going to get anywhere. And that's our first cry of wolf.
Right.
Right. And oh, by the way, you guys, like, chill. Now they did add an element. They did add a failsafe that, but again, they went from adding that in an urgent fashion.
Right.
Right. And the problem hasn't, by the way, the failsafe hasn't been kicked in at all. So again, do nothing in that case was an act.
Yeah. All right. Did you hit on all the points that you wanted to hit on around day to day? Because we talked about RevOps, we talked about client delivery. I didn't know if there was anything else day to day specifically before I share kind of my key takeaways.
You tell me, did I miss anything?
I mean, I think you covered it. I think you hit on everything. So for me, a couple of things that you said that really resonated. The time RevOps is important is when there's no right decision and no wrong decision. I think that's really key. I always think about RevOps' jobs is to manage and talk about the trade-offs on decisions, and those two kind of go hand in hand.
Well, the whole point of trade-offs is the fact that there is no right or wrong. There's a choice.
Exactly. Your definition of unique, of 80% the same and 20% different, I never thought about it that way. So I think we think of unique as being 100% different. And I think that's important to call out because there's similarities even in something that's unique. It's similar to other things.
Yeah, I think that unique, I mean, I do believe unique is unique, which means one of a kind.
Right.
But 100% one of a kind. Like what do we talk about as a unique? Star Wars was considered unique for a while.
Yeah.
Except it's not really unique. It's a Western.
Right.
What was unique? It was a Western
in space. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The Sopranos was a unique show. It was a family drama mixed with Godfather.
Yep.
Like, what happens when there's family stress and dad offs people?
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Breaking Bad. Right. So when you look at these things, are there times where there's something truly, fully unique? I'm sure there is. Right?
Yep.
But when it's truly unique, we can't do anything with it. It's going to take us time to, right? But unique is more of a mix, and yeah, so it's like this business is different from that business, right? In that it's 80% the same and 20% different.
Yep. And then the last thing is this process makes you feel like the change is less drastic. So it's almost like it gives you that safety because as humans, we're not comfortable with change.
So the only thing I'm going to say is it should be more than it makes it feel this way. It should reduce it.
Okay.
Right. Because one of the things that like the biggest mistake that gets made and it kills so much potential is we try to change too much too fast. We take too big of a step. Right. Consistency is what wins the game.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Consistency is what wins championships.
Okay.
At least regular season championships. Once you get into a tournament, it's a different thing. And stability is what enables people to thrive. And so there's a whole element of, transformation isn't done in a step. Transformation is thousands of steps.
Yep.
Right. With 4 big advances. Right. But it's the 1,000 steps. It's, there's a great poem that I read about, snow falling on a tree branch. And then the last snowflake falls and the tree branch breaks. Did the last snowflake break the tree branch? No, it didn't break the tree branch. The billion snowflakes before it.
Right.
Right. And so that's why we talk about the 3 zones of execution. That's why we talk about system design. Right. Because if we just jump in and we're changing shit and we don't have that orientation, that hypothesis, well, the next thing that happens, we're just flying further in the dark.
Yep.
And the thing that scares everybody, the thing that scares a lot of legitimate people about AI, I mean, and I'm not talking about large language models, I'm talking about real machine learning, is that what happens when the program learns more than you know and has made decisions that you don't know, and now it's malfunctioning, what do you do?
Right. Yeah.
That's what we're talking about.
Well, I found this really interesting. Like you said, this concept I hadn't heard of before. It resonated with me when we were talking about it. So I think it was good to cover. It definitely applies to RevOps, and yeah, thought it was good.
And Jess?
Yes, Doug?
Remember, just say no to shitty RevOps.
Until next time.
And that's a wrap on this episode of the RevOps Show. Observe, orient, decide, and act. OODA Loop. When you have a high-stakes situation, remember you can apply this framework as well. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to go subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to us. We'd also appreciate a review or sharing of the episode. We love reading what you all have to say about the show. And if you have any questions you would like to ask Doug or Jess about OODA Loop or about how to apply OODA Loop to your business, email me at hannah@liftenablement.com or hit us up on formerly Twitter, now X, @DemandCreator. And until next time, just say no to shitty RevOps.